After Rob Reiner's death, the heartbreak didn't stop at the funeral. It only got heavier. What should have been a quiet moment of closure turned into shock and disbelief when the will was finally read. Roy and Jake sat frozen as they learned that the entire $200 million fortune, built from decades of hard work, fame, and legacy, wasn't left to them at all. Instead, every last cent was donated to charitable foundations. That moment flipped everything upside down. Their sorrow twisted into outrage, and the silence of grief was replaced by a storm of confusion and anger. Reports claim Jake lashed out, saying his parents had chosen the world over their own family. Within hours, phones were ringing, lawyers were called, and what started as mourning turned into a legal battle that the whole public couldn't look away from. As the courtroom drama heated up, shocking revelations started to surface, each one peeling back the curtain on the Reiners' private world. Nearly 2 weeks after that devastating day, December 14, 2025, when Rob and Michelle were found lifeless inside their Brentwood home, the family finally got the chance to say goodbye in peace once the coroner finished the examinations.
We were going to war again based on a lie. And it was just very, very disturbing. And there's a line in the film where James Marsden, who plays Warren Strobel, he says, it feels like you feel like your child is running into the street.
By December 19th, records confirmed their eldest son, Jake Reiner, as the official informant on both certificates and the one who received their ashes. According to documents from the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health, Rob and Michelle Reiner were finally laid to rest. But even as the ashes settled, the questions and the tension refused to fade. The cremation took place at Mount Sinai Mortuary, a highly respected Jewish funeral home nestled in the Hollywood Hills, known as the final resting place for countless Hollywood legends. But Mount Sinai isn't just a cremation site. It's deeply tied to the nearby Mount Sinai Memorial Park, a sacred ground cherished by the Jewish community for generations. The process moved quickly, honoring Jewish tradition, which calls for burial or cremation as soon as possible. Everything was done with quiet respect and deep sorrow. Roy and Jake Reiner kept things low-key, steering clear of cameras and headlines. No flashing lights, no reporters, just a small, private group of loved ones gathered in silence. In a deeply emotional gesture, Rob and Michelle's ashes were taken to Jake's home, allowing the family to keep their parents close during the darkest, most painful days of mourning. According to sources close to the Reiners, no final choice had yet been made about a permanent resting place. Some whispered that the ashes might one day be scattered somewhere deeply meaningful, or perhaps partly kept within the family's cemetery plot.
Norman Lear was the first person that got me. I mean, I was playing jacks with his daughter. Norman says to my dad, you know, this kid is really funny. My dad said, what, that kid? That kid, he's a sullen. He sits quiet. He doesn't, he's not funny.
But that fragile calm didn't last. Not long after, paparazzi and news crews caught a glimpse of Roy and Jake stepping into a prestigious Beverly Hills law firm, one famous for handling explosive inheritance battles among Hollywood's elite. Dressed in dark clothes and hiding behind sunglasses, the brothers looked tense and focused, setting the stage for a storm that was clearly just beginning. Their faces said it all, pure exhaustion mixed with heartbreak. Neither Roy nor Jake uttered a single word as photographers bombarded them with questions, their cameras flashing non-stop. Within minutes, those haunting images spread like wildfire online, paired with dramatic headlines screaming about a $200 million inheritance showdown. That was all it took for the internet to explode with speculation. Everyone wanted to know, why were the Reiner siblings meeting with lawyers so soon after their parents' passing? What made it even stranger was that there hadn't been any official word about how the assets would be divided, or even confirmation that the will had been opened. Roy kept completely silent, her eyes heavy with grief, while Jake walked a few steps ahead, almost like he was shielding her from the chaos of reporters crowding around them.
I think with any indie project, it is a heavy lift no matter what you do. I mean, it is a grassroots effort to raise money to make this film, and then not only that, but take it to theaters. We didn't want to go to the streaming route. We wanted to put it into theaters because we felt like, as a comedy, we wanted that experience of everybody watching the movie together and laughing together.
The questions from journalists grew louder and more desperate. Has Rob Reiner's will been validated yet? One shouted. Another yelled, who's controlling the assets until the estate is finalized? Their voices echoed down the cold marble hallway, totally detached from the raw grief the siblings were still drowning in, barely 2 weeks after losing both parents. And just when it seemed like the story couldn't get any heavier, a shocking new revelation hit like a bombshell. A source close to the family revealed that Rob Reiner had made a decision no one saw coming. Nearly his entire $200 million fortune had been donated to charitable foundations. The revelation didn't make a loud entrance. It crept in quietly, but the shockwaves it caused were impossible to ignore. People couldn't stop talking about it. According to a longtime family friend, Rob's decision to give away his fortune wasn't about rejection or bitterness. It came from a deeply held belief he'd carried for years. He always said he wanted his kids to stand on their own 2 feet. In his eyes, too much inherited wealth could become a trap, softening ambition and robbing someone of purpose. That same friend revealed that Rob often preached about independence, saying things like, Jake, Romy, and Nick need to build their own paths. But his reasoning for each child ran deeper than most realized. For Nick, who'd faced personal struggles over the years, Rob believed that stepping outside comfort and facing life head-on was the only way for him to find strength and clarity. Rob had once confided that if he kept protecting Nick forever, his son might never truly learn what responsibility meant. A close friend later explained Rob's thinking. Handing someone who's still emotionally unstable a massive inheritance would be like throwing more wood onto a fire that's already burning. He wanted his son to face the real world, not hide behind wealth. Rob believed the only true teacher was life itself, through hard work, effort, and the courage to face reality. Jake and Roy, on the other hand, were different. Rob admired the independence he already saw in them, the ability to stand strong without leaning on anyone else. Jake had already carved a solid career and built his own life, something Rob was quietly proud of. To him, that was the real legacy he wanted to leave behind. Roy had been pouring her heart into her creative projects, carving her own lane with steady focus and drive. She too, like Jake, had already proven that her worth wasn't tied to inheritance or fame. It came from her own hustle and passion. Rob used to joke, "My kids can handle it. They're stronger than people think." To him, real success wasn't about how much money a parent left behind. It was about whether their children could keep moving forward with purpose once they were gone. That's why long before his passing, Rob had already made his wishes unmistakably clear. Almost all of his $200 million fortune would be donated to charitable foundations. He believed wealth should keep serving others, not become a false cushion that dulls ambition or weakens character. And Rob didn't just talk about it, he put that belief into action. Sources close to the family revealed that Rob personally asked Roy to handle the sale of their Brentwood home and other valuable properties, with every dollar from those sales going straight to the charities he and Michelle cared about most. These included causes tied to education, health care, and vital community programs they had supported for decades. One close friend remembered a late-night conversation that later felt almost prophetic. Rob had said, "Parents don't live to pave the road for their children. Parents live to teach them how to walk on their own." Those words became his unshakable truth. He knew Jake and Roy might feel hurt, even betrayed at first, but deep down he trusted they would one day understand that his decision wasn't about leaving them with nothing, it was about leaving them with strength. Still, that noble belief Rob lived by became painfully complicated once tragedy struck. Even though Nick wasn't legally cut off from his inheritance due to the investigation surrounding him, the truth was brutal. None of the Reiner children were left a single cent. When Jake and Roy finally realized that, it hit them like a punch to the chest. According to sources close to the family, what followed wasn't just legal paperwork. It was heartbreak transforming into defiance behind the closed doors of a powerful Beverly Hills law firm. Inside that office, emotions ran high. Roy, unable to hold it together, broke down in tears, saying, "This isn't fair." Jake's reaction was louder, sharper, and full of frustration. He reportedly shouted, "They chose to care for the world, but forgot about their own children." Those weren't words of greed. They came straight from a place of deep pain. It was the cry of two siblings who suddenly felt erased from their own family story. The same family that had once taught them about love, giving, and compassion.
Their anger wasn't aimed at the charities. It was about feeling invisible in their parents' final chapter. Determined to make things right, Jake and Roy began exploring every possible legal angle to challenge the will. They dove into the fine print, digging through timing discrepancies, trust structures, and any clauses that could be disputed. Before long, they brought together a powerhouse legal team known for handling high-stakes Hollywood inheritance wars. Leading the charge was Daniel Kraus, nicknamed the man who overturns unshakable wills, alongside Evelyn Hartman, a sharp expert in charitable estate law. Their first meeting was tense, heavy with emotion and determination. Kraus reportedly warned the siblings, "If you want fairness, this is going to be a long and very difficult fight." And with that, the battle for the Reiner legacy officially began. Jake didn't even blink. "We're not afraid. We've already lost everything," he said, his voice steady but full of pain. Witnesses later described that moment as a verdict of the heart, a line drawn between grief and determination. From there, their plans started taking form. Challenge the charitable foundations and argue that the Reiner children had been unfairly cut out of their rightful place in their parents' legacy. Behind closed doors, their intentions became crystal clear. This wasn't just about getting something back, it was about reclaiming everything. Roy, usually the quieter one, spoke up with surprising resolve. "I don't want a portion, I want it all. They're gone, and we've been left with nothing," she reportedly said, her words trembling but fierce. Their lawyers warned them about what could come next. Going up against charitable organizations, especially ones connected to causes their parents championed, could spark huge public backlash and risk damaging Rob and Michelle's legacies. But Jake wouldn't back down. "Public opinion isn't my family," he fired back, making it clear that this was personal. That defiant statement summed up the storm raging inside the Reiner household, a war between principle and pain. The legal team began collecting everything they could: old emails, handwritten notes, personal journals, even Rob's private reflections to build their case. Their mission was to prove that Rob's final decisions might not have fully reflected his emotional or mental state at the time. "This isn't just a lawsuit about money," attorney Daniel Kraus reportedly said. "It's a fight to redefine what their father's legacy really means." And that's exactly what it became, a battle not just in the courtroom, but in the hearts of two grieving siblings. Love, anger, and resentment all collided, twisting the very values Rob had spent his life teaching: independence, accountability, and self-reliance. For Jake and Roy, it wasn't just about money, it was about the ache of never getting the chance to ask why before it was too late. Outside their walls, the world kept celebrating Rob Reiner as a hero of compassion and social justice. But inside, behind closed doors, his family was quietly falling apart, torn by the very ideals he had built his life around. "Rob always believed his children would understand," one family friend said sadly, "but he left before hearing them say they weren't ready." Those words hit hard. What began as a dispute over a will had transformed into something much deeper, an emotional story about love, legacy, and heartbreak. It became a painful reminder that even the purest intentions can leave behind scars no inheritance could ever heal.
For decades, Rob and Michelle Reiner had been admired as one of Hollywood's most devoted, social-conscious power couples. Their passion for helping others shaped every part of their lives, from championing early childhood education to fighting for equality and human rights. Their work wasn't about fame or recognition, it was about impact. And the greatest proof of that legacy was their life's proudest creation, the I Am Your Child Foundation. That organization stood as a living monument to everything they believed in. It wasn't just another Hollywood charity, it was a movement. The foundation broke new ground as one of the first nonprofits focused on the critical developmental years between birth and age 3, shining a spotlight on how early care and education could change a child's entire future. Even now, that foundation remains a symbol of Rob and Michelle's compassion, a love for humanity that stretched far beyond fame, and a legacy that, for better or worse, continues to echo through their family's story. Through groundbreaking educational films like I Am Your Child, The First Years Last Forever, featuring Hollywood icons like Tom Hanks and Oprah Winfrey, Rob's vision reached millions of American families. Those films completely transformed how an entire generation of parents understood early childhood learning and emotional development. It wasn't just another campaign, it was a movement that changed lives. Riding on that momentum, Rob didn't slow down, he doubled down. He launched Parents Action for Children, an ambitious advocacy group built to connect neuroscience and child psychology directly to public policy. His mission was clear and bold, to push California lawmakers to invest in young children and give low-income families real, lasting support. While Rob led the charge publicly, Michelle was the quiet force working behind the curtain, organizing donors, coordinating with legislators, and pulling every string needed to make sure their vision stayed alive. Together, they were a powerhouse of passion and purpose. One of their biggest victories came with Proposition 10, a campaign Rob personally led to place a small tax on tobacco products. The funds went straight into First 5 California, an initiative dedicated to improving healthcare, education, and overall development for children under age 5. The outcome was incredible. Billions of dollars poured into programs helping kids thrive across the state. To this day, Proposition 10 stands as one of the most successful examples of activism and policymaking joining forces to create real, measurable change. But Rob's fight for fairness didn't end there. He went on to co-found the American Foundation for Equal Rights, a group that made history by challenging the laws that once restricted marriage rights in California. That bold move became part of a legal battle that ultimately reached the U.S. Supreme Court, culminating in the landmark 2015 decision that made marriage equality the law of the land across America. Rob Reiner didn't just talk about justice, he made it happen, leaving behind a legacy that shaped both Hollywood and history itself. While Rob often stood in the public eye as the voice and face of their mission, Michelle was the mastermind working quietly in the background, the strategist who made sure every move had purpose. She was the one coordinating press outreach, rallying artists to the cause, and ensuring every campaign carried real heart behind it. Together, they were a powerhouse of passion and purpose. Beyond their own organizations, Rob and Michelle gave endlessly to social causes, public education, mental health programs, and groups helping people rebuild their lives after recovery. Yet much of their generosity stayed hidden from the spotlight. Rob always believed that real charity doesn't need applause. It was about impact, not recognition. Even through his filmmaking, Rob managed to fuse art with activism. His movies often carried powerful messages about empathy, humanity, and justice, and he regularly hosted charity screenings to raise funds for community programs, supporting everything from child education to civil rights. Every film, every event carried a purpose bigger than entertainment. It was about sparking change. Michelle, with her producer's eye and compassionate spirit, became the perfect counterpart to Rob's vision. She blended creativity with care, turning big ideas into tangible results that touched lives. Few knew how deeply involved they both were behind the scenes. They didn't just donate or lend their famous names, they showed up every single time. Rob and Michelle sat on multiple advisory boards across California, focusing on child welfare, early education, and community development. They weren't figureheads, they were hands-on change makers. They attended long, exhausting meetings, pored over detailed reports, and debated budget lines late into the night to make sure every dollar truly made a difference. For them, giving wasn't a performance, it was a responsibility. And that commitment, quiet yet relentless, became the beating heart of everything they stood for. Over the years, Rob and Michelle Reiner poured millions into political and social causes, never afraid to put their influence where it mattered most. They hosted some of Hollywood's most high-profile fundraisers, rallying support for major political figures like Al Gore, Hillary Clinton, and Joe Biden. At one point, Rob even toyed with the idea of running for governor of California himself, but ultimately decided that politics wasn't his true calling.
His heart belonged to advocacy and storytelling. For Rob, family and principles always came before personal ambition. When national issues started to divide the country, he didn't stay silent. In 2017, he co-founded an independent committee dedicated to investigating election-related concerns, determined to stand up for truth and democracy. And of course, Michelle was right there beside him, just as driven and steadfast as ever. Together, they co-produced powerful documentaries like God and Country, which fearlessly explored the tense intersection between faith, politics, and power in modern America. Their work sparked tough conversations and challenged viewers to see the world differently. But their legacy wasn't just about big speeches or generous checks. It showed up in real, measurable change. Millions of children across California gained access to better early education because of their relentless advocacy. Countless couples finally saw their right to marry recognized equally under the law. And thanks to their tireless work, progressive ideas found a louder, stronger voice in Hollywood and beyond. So when news broke that Rob had chosen to leave nearly all of his $200 million fortune to charity, those who truly knew him weren't shocked. It fit perfectly with everything he had ever stood for. To the world, it looked like generosity on a grand scale, but to those close to him, it was simply Rob being Rob, faithful to his values until the very end. Rob Reiner's generosity was never about luxury. It was about leaving something that mattered. But that raised a question everyone was asking. How did Rob build such an incredible $200 million fortune in the first place? The answer lies in a lifetime of pure dedication to storytelling and entertainment. His journey began in front of the camera with his breakout role on the legendary television series All in the Family. The show made him a household name overnight, earning him fame, respect, and a foundation strong enough to launch one of the most iconic directing careers in Hollywood history. But Rob's true legacy and the real source of his massive wealth came when he stepped behind the camera. As a director and producer, he delivered hit after hit, films like When Harry Met Sally, Misery, A Few Good Men, The American President, and Stand By Me. These weren't just box office successes, they became timeless cultural landmarks that defined an entire era of film. By the late 1980s and throughout the 1990s, Rob had reached powerhouse status. Reports say he was earning directing fees in the tens of millions per film, plus massive back-end profit shares that kept generating income long after the movies had left theaters. That rare mix of creative brilliance and sharp business instinct turned Rob Reiner from a beloved actor into one of the most respected filmmakers in Hollywood. And it was that combination, artistic vision and financial savvy, that quietly built the foundation of the fortune now at the center of one of Hollywood's most emotional inheritance battles.
One of the biggest turning points in Rob's financial story came in 1987 when he co-founded Castle Rock Entertainment. The company exploded onto the Hollywood scene, producing some of the most iconic projects in film and television history, including Seinfeld and The Shawshank Redemption. Castle Rock became a symbol of smart filmmaking, where creativity met commercial success. And through it all, Rob Reiner wasn't just building wealth, he was shaping culture, cementing his legacy as both a storyteller and a visionary businessman. When Castle Rock Entertainment was eventually sold and restructured in the early 1990s, Rob Reiner and his fortune changed forever. That sale earned him a massive payout from his ownership stake, marking one of the biggest financial leaps of his entire career. It was the moment that transformed Rob from a Hollywood success story into a true industry mogul. But filmmaking wasn't his only golden ticket. Rob was incredibly smart with his money, especially when it came to real estate. In 1991, he bought his main residence, the now famous Brentwood Mansion, from legendary producer Norman Lear for about $4.75 million. Today, that same property is estimated to be worth between $10 and $13.5 million. And that wasn't his only gem. He also owned a breathtaking beachfront villa in Malibu's ultra-exclusive Colony area, a property he purchased in the 1990s for roughly $4 million. Over the years, its value skyrocketed to nearly $20 million during peak market seasons. At times, he even rented it out for as much as $150,000 a month, turning his luxury getaway into a serious income stream. His portfolio didn't stop there. Rob quietly acquired several other high-end homes across Beverly Hills and other elite Los Angeles neighborhoods. As the Hollywood property market exploded, so did the value of his investments, securing him a rock-solid financial foundation for decades to come. But Rob's wealth wasn't just built on real estate, it was fueled by the enduring power of his creativity. Classic films like This Is Spinal Tap and When Harry Met Sally never stopped earning. They kept streaming online, airing on TV, and captivating new audiences around the world. Each royalty check might have seemed small on its own, but year after year they piled up into a massive fortune. It was proof that Rob's true magic wasn't just in making hits, it was in creating stories that never stopped paying back. One of Rob Reiner's late-life victories came when he finally settled the long-running copyright dispute over This Is Spinal Tap. That agreement gave Rob and his co-creators greater creative control and rightful financial ownership of their work, a symbolic and practical win that added even more strength to his lifelong income stream. It wasn't just about the money, it was about reclaiming what was his. Even outside of Hollywood, Rob managed his finances with remarkable discipline. He maintained a carefully balanced investment portfolio, stocks, bonds, and other stable assets that kept his wealth secure, especially in the years when he stepped back from directing. It was classic Rob, thoughtful, cautious, and always a few steps ahead. But behind every decision, there was Michelle Singer Reiner, the quiet architect who helped make it all possible. She wasn't just Rob's partner in love, she was his partner in strategy. Michelle co-produced films, offered sharp business insight, and guided major financial moves that kept their empire strong. Friends close to the couple often said Michelle had an instinct for timing. She could sense when to invest, when to hold back, and when to pivot. Her influence shielded the family from the financial pitfalls that have destroyed so many Hollywood fortunes over the years. Together, they built something solid, lasting, and deeply intentional. From All in the Family to Castle Rock Entertainment, from blockbuster films to lifelong royalties and prime real estate in Brentwood and Malibu, Rob Reiner had built an empire worth around $200 million. It was a fortune powered by imagination, persistence, and love. But when the will was finally unsealed after his passing, it struck like thunder across Hollywood. every headline screamed the same thing. Rob Reiner had left everything not to his children, but to the charitable foundations and causes he believed in most. The irony was heartbreaking. The fortune that took a lifetime to build, crafted from creativity and passion, had become the very thing dividing the family he cherished the most. It was a noble, selfless act, but one that left his family in pieces. To the world, Rob Reiner's final gesture looked like the ultimate act of generosity, a man giving everything back to society. But to his children, it felt like something far different, as if Rob had chosen to leave them standing outside his final embrace. Did Rob truly believe that real love meant teaching independence by leaving behind no material inheritance? Or was it a choice born from solitude, a quiet decision made after years of emotional distance that even $200 million could never mend? Those questions still hang heavy in the air, unanswered and haunting. Was Rob Reiner's final act of ultimate compassion or deep heartbreak? Was it wisdom or misunderstanding? Maybe it was both. His story has become a reflection of how love, legacy, and loss can collide in the most unexpected ways. A reminder that even the kindest intentions can leave behind wounds that time alone can't heal. Thank you for staying with this story until the end, a story woven with legacy, ideals, and the quiet pain of what's left unsaid. Rob Reiner's life was filled with purpose and heart, but his final chapter reminds us that even heroes of compassion face the most human struggles behind closed doors. If you have your own thoughts about Rob Reiner's will or about how love and legacy sometimes clash in heartbreaking ways, drop them in the comments below.
And if you want to dive deeper into more untold stories like this, tales of powerful families, hidden truths, and legacies that still echo long after the spotlight fades, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and turn on notifications. Because some stories, even after the final page is turned, never truly end.